Madonna, the queen of pop. For over 4 decades, she has dominated the music industry, constantly reinventing herself and pushing boundaries in ways no other artist dared. From her rise in the 1980s with hits like a Virgin and Material Girl, to her later reinventions as a provocateur, activist, and global icon, Madonna has remained one of the most influential and controversial figures in entertainment history. To her fans, she has always seemed untouchable, fearless, powerful, and unstoppable. But behind the glittering stage lights and the carefully crafted image lies a much darker reality. Now at 67, Madonna's story has taken a heartbreaking turn that few could have predicted. In recent years, she has faced mounting struggles, health scares, the pressures of aging in an industry obsessed with youth, fractured personal relationships, and the painful loneliness that often comes with fame. For a woman who once ruled the charts and redefined pop culture, the truth of her private battles is nothing short of tragic. Madonna's confession and the revelations about her current life paint a portrait far different from the fearless superstar we've always seen on stage. She has endured physical pain, emotional loss, and the cruel sting of criticism as the world she helped shape continues to judge her mercilessly. For fans who grew up idolizing her strength and resilience, the reality of her struggles is devastating. So how did the woman who once seemed unstoppable find herself in such a heartbreaking place? What happened behind the scenes of her glittering empire that left her facing such tragedy in her later years? This is the untold story of Madonna, the pain, the loss, and the haunting truth behind the Queen of Pop's life at 67. To understand the tragedy of Madonna at 67, it's important to first revisit the extraordinary journey that made her a global icon. Born Madonna Louise Ciccone in Bay City, Michigan in 1958, her beginnings were anything but glamorous. She was one of 6 children in a strict Catholic household, and her early years were marked by hardship and loss. At just 5 years old, Madonna's mother died of breast cancer, leaving a wound that would shape her entire life. The absence of maternal love haunted her, driving both her ambition and her relentless need to control her own destiny. By the time she was a teenager, Madonna was already determined to escape the confines of her small-town life. In 1978, with only $35 in her pocket, she moved to New York City. She once described that moment as the bravest thing she ever did, because she was alone, broke, and terrified. Yet it was in that struggle that her identity began to form. She waited tables, posed as a nude art model, and danced with underground groups, all while fighting to break into the music scene. Her big break came in the early 1980s when she began performing in clubs, blending pop melodies with an unapologetic attitude that was fresh, daring, and unlike anything audiences had seen before. With her debut singles Holiday and Borderline, she caught the world's attention. But it was like a Virgin in 1984 that turned her into a global superstar. Wearing a wedding dress and writhing on stage during the MTV Video Music Awards, Madonna announced that she wasn't just a singer, she was a cultural force who would provoke, challenge, and redefine the boundaries of entertainment. Through the 1980s and 90s, Madonna became more than a pop star. She was a phenomenon. She reinvented herself constantly, from the material girl persona to the edgy provocateur of erotica and sex, and later the spiritual seeker in Ray of Light. She wasn't just following trends, she was creating them. With every new image, she kept the world watching, ensuring her reign as the undisputed queen of pop. But her success came at a price. The more Madonna pushed boundaries, the more she became a lightning rod for criticism. Religious groups condemned her, critics dismissed her as scandalous, and tabloids obsessed over every detail of her private life. Yet she thrived on the controversy, using it as fuel to maintain her relevance. For decades, she seemed unstoppable, fearless in her defiance, unbothered by judgment, and utterly in control of her narrative. Still, the seeds of her later tragedy were already being planted. Her constant reinvention created enormous pressure to stay ahead of the curve. Her relationships, often played out in the public eye, rarely lasted. And behind the scenes, Madonna was beginning to feel the weight of loneliness and the toll of an industry that valued youth above all else. By the time she turned 40, Madonna had achieved everything an artist could dream of: multiple platinum albums, sold-out tours, acting roles, business ventures, and global influence. But even then, she admitted that she feared what would happen when the spotlight began to fade. She had built her entire life on being the center of attention, the rebel who refused to age or conform. What would happen when the world moved on? Looking back now at 67, that question feels haunting. For while Madonna's legacy is secure, the struggles she faces today, health issues, public criticism, and a growing sense of isolation, reveal a much more fragile side of the woman who once seemed invincible. Her rise was meteoric, her reign unprecedented, but the price of being Madonna would eventually prove devastating. For all of Madonna's dominance on stage and in the studio, her personal life was far less triumphant. Behind the confidence, the controversies, and the carefully constructed reinventions was a woman who, like anyone else, yearned for stability, intimacy, and lasting love. Yet time and again, relationships that began with passion and promise ended in heartbreak, leaving her to navigate the loneliness that fame seemed only to magnify. Her first high-profile marriage was to actor Sean Penn in 1985. At the time, they were considered Hollywood's hottest young couple, two rebellious spirits who seemed destined to shake up the industry together. But their union was stormy, marred by explosive arguments and constant media attention. Madonna would later describe the relationship as intense and volatile. The marriage ended in divorce in 1989, leaving her emotionally scarred and wary of giving herself fully to another partner. In the years that followed, Madonna's romantic life remained under the microscope. She was linked to high-profile figures ranging from Warren Beatty to basketball legend Dennis Rodman. Each relationship seemed to be scrutinized more for its sensationalism than its sincerity, reinforcing the sense that her private life was never truly her own. Her second marriage, to filmmaker Guy Ritchie in 2000, seemed more stable at first. They shared a son, Rocco, and for a time, Madonna embraced the idea of family life in England. But even that relationship soured, ending in a bitter divorce in 2008. The split was public and painful, with both sides trading sharp words in the press. Madonna herself admitted the breakup was one of the most difficult periods of her life, one that left her questioning her ability to ever find lasting love. Alongside these failed relationships, Madonna's role as a mother brought both joy and challenge. She adopted several children from Malawi, in addition to raising her biological daughter Lourdes and son Rocco. While motherhood gave her purpose and deep emotional connection, it also fueled intense media scrutiny. Every parenting decision she made, from her strict household rules to her controversial custody battles, was dissected publicly, often cruelly. For a woman who had already spent decades under the microscope, the judgment was relentless. Compounding this was the double standard she faced as a female artist. Male rock stars of her generation were celebrated for their romantic escapades and endless reinventions, but Madonna was harshly criticized for the same behavior. Every new relationship was mocked, every youthful partner treated as scandalous, and every attempt to assert her independence dismissed as desperation. The sexism was glaring, and it weighed heavily on her. By her own admission, Madonna often felt misunderstood and unfairly judged. While the world saw her as cold, calculating, and unfeeling, she described herself as someone who craved love, but was too often met with betrayal, jealousy, or opportunism. Trust became difficult, and the walls around her heart grew higher with every failed relationship. As the years passed, the pressure of maintaining her image as the fearless queen of pop only deepened her isolation. She had built a career on being provocative, in control, and ahead of her time. But in her private life, she often felt powerless against the forces of fame. Love, the one thing she longed for most, seemed to slip further from her grasp with every passing year. At 67, when Madonna speaks of her past relationships, there is a haunting honesty. She admits that her relentless pursuit of success sometimes cost her the chance at deeper emotional connections. Yet she also points to the harsh reality of fame. How do you find genuine love when the whole world sees you as a commodity, a brand, rather than a person? This duality, powerful on stage, vulnerable in private, defined much of Madonna's personal tragedy. Her career gave her the world, but it often left her without the one thing she wanted most, a lasting, unconditional love. And as time wore on, the weight of this loss became harder to ignore. For decades, Madonna built her empire on reinvention. She was never content to stay in one lane. She pushed boundaries, changed her image, and redefined what it meant to be a female artist in control of her career. But as she entered her 60s, the greatest challenge she faced was one she couldn't outmaneuver: aging. In an industry obsessed with youth and beauty, Madonna found herself fighting a battle that was both personal and public, one that revealed the cruel reality of fame in its rawest form. From the very beginning, Madonna had made her body and sexuality part of her art. She challenged norms by refusing to hide her age, her desires, or her independence. Yet as she grew older, the very things that once made her revolutionary became weapons used against her. Tabloids mocked her for dating younger partners. Critics sneered at her revealing costumes, and social media erupted with ridicule every time she posted images of herself that didn't conform to society's expectations of how a woman her age should behave. At 67, the scrutiny has only intensified. While male artists of her generation, like Mick Jagger or Paul McCartney, are celebrated for still performing, Madonna is often ridiculed for refusing to fade quietly into the background. The double standard has been devastating. She has spoken openly about the ageism she faces, calling it one of the last acceptable prejudices in entertainment. To her, the message is clear. Women are allowed to be icons when they are young, but once they age, they are expected to disappear. Adding to the emotional toll have been serious health struggles. In recent years, Madonna has faced multiple injuries from her physically demanding performances, including knee and hip problems that forced her to cancel tour dates. In 2023, she was hospitalized for a severe bacterial infection, a frightening health scare that nearly took her life. Friends and fans alike were shocked by the news, as the image of Madonna had always been one of unshakable strength. For the first time, the world saw her not as an indestructible superstar, but as a vulnerable human being fighting for her health. These health battles forced her to confront the reality of her own mortality. For a woman who had spent her entire career defying expectations, the fragility of her body was a painful reminder that even Madonna could not escape time. She admitted that the experience left her shaken, grateful to be alive, but also deeply aware of how precious and fleeting life is. Public perception, however, has been far less compassionate. Social media often erupts with cruel jokes about her appearance, speculating endlessly about cosmetic procedures and mocking her efforts to maintain a youthful image. Instead of respecting her resilience, the public seems fixated on tearing her down. For Madonna, who has always been fiercely proud of her body and her ability to control her image, this ridicule cuts deeply. She has spoken about how difficult it is to grow older under the spotlight, where every wrinkle, every scar, and every change is magnified and criticized. For someone whose career was built on boldness and fearlessness, the relentless commentary on her aging feels like a betrayal. She once said, "They're not criticizing my music, they're criticizing my existence." Those words reveal the pain behind the headlines. That society has turned one of the most groundbreaking artists of all time into a target for mockery, simply because she refuses to conform to its narrow standards of beauty and age. At 67, Madonna continues to perform, to release music and to live on her own terms. But the battle against time and against the public's judgment has left scars. Her determination to keep going is admirable, but it is also heartbreaking, because it often feels like she is fighting against the very world she helped transform. Her tragedy lies not just in her struggles with aging or health, but in the cruel reality that society has denied her the respect and dignity she deserves. Instead of celebrating her resilience, too many have chosen to tear her down. And for Madonna, who has given so much of herself to the world, that rejection has been the most painful of all.